Then clause 26. Clause 26.1. This is of course the offences and penalties. 26.1. Any person who unlawfully furnishes, disseminates or publishes in any manner whatsoever information relating to the security measures applicable at or in respect of a critical infrastructure other than in accordance with the Protected Disclosures Act, with a reference, Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act, with a reference, or any other act of Parliament that provides for the lawful disclosure of information. And maybe I can just once again draw the committee's attention to 26.1, where it says any person who unlawfully, and that unlawfully, the word there actually equates to without justification. So all those justifications and the defences are captured in the word unlawfully. If I may proceed to paragraph B, takes or records or causes to take or record an analog or digital photographic image, video, film of the security measures at a critical infrastructure or critical infrastructure complex. The next paragraph in the existing B bill is paragraph C. It's unfortunately not indicated there, but it takes or records or causes to take or record the photographic image in contravention of a notice in terms of 24.8 or 25.8. That was removed simply because the offence, as was captured in the opinion of Advocate Trengove, is doesn't take the bill any further, so that offence was removed, with all the consequential numbering changes in the paragraphs. Paragraph C, hinders, obstructs or disobeys a person in control of an infrastructure, a critical infrastructure, rather in taking any steps required or ordered in terms of this act in relation to the security of any critical infrastructure. D, hinders, obstructs or disobeys any person while performing a function or in doing anything required to be done in terms of this act. E, enters or gains access to critical infrastructure without the consent of the security manager or person in control of that critical infrastructure. F, enters or gains access to critical infrastructure in contravention of the notice contemplated in section 24.8 or 25.8. Paragraph D, damages, endangers or disrupts a critical infrastructure or threatens the safety or security at a critical infrastructure or part thereof. H, threatens to damage critical infrastructure. Or I, colludes with or assists another person in the commission, performance or carrying out of an activity referred to in paragraphs A to I, commits an offence and is subject to subsection 2 and 3, liable on conviction to a fine or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 3 years, or to both a fine and imprisonment. And then the new subclause 2, which contains a narrow definition of security measures. For purposes of subsection 1A and subsection 1B, that's the disclosure and the photographs, security measures means those security measures at critical infrastructure that are not clearly visible to the public or in the public domain. That definition was inserted there to make sure that the photograph of the gate at the dam that Chairperson mentioned earlier is not
a bad example, gate dam.
Yeah, but I will not respond to the bait. If the subclause 3, if the evidence on a charge for any offence in subsection 1A to I proves that the activity referred to was carried out with the intention to cause damage or substantial harm to critical infrastructure, the court may, in the case of critical infrastructure categorized as low risk, impose a fine or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 3 years or both a fine and imprisonment. medium risk, impose a fine or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 5 years, or both a fine and imprisonment, or C, high risk, impose a fine or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 7 years, or both a fine and imprisonment. And members will note that those are maximum penalties and not minimum penalties. Those are the maximum. Subclause 4. If the evidence on a charge for any offence in subsection 1A to J proves that the activity referred to in fact caused damage, substantial harm or loss of property to the critical infrastructure in question, the court may, in the case of critical infrastructure categorized as low risk, a court may impose a fine or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 10 years, or both a fine and imprisonment. B, medium risk, a court may impose a fine or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 15 years, or both a fine and imprisonment. High risk, a court may impose a fine or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 20 years, or both a fine and imprisonment. And I may just draw the attention of the members to A, B, and C, where the words a court need to come out, because that is already captured in the main subclause 4. So that will be a further amendment that will be proposed. Subclause 5. Any person in control of a critical infrastructure who A, knowingly furnishes false or incorrect information on an application for declaration as critical infrastructure, refuses or fails to comply with a notice issued in terms of section 11.3 or 11.4, those are the inspection notices, refuses or fails to take the steps specified in the notice contemplated in section 24.1, those are the steps that need to be taken after declaration. Refuses or fails to take the steps specified in the notice contemplated in section 24.1 within the period specified in the notice. E, refuses or fails to comply with section 24.8 in circumstances where compliance would not severely threaten the security at the critical infrastructure concerned. This is the 24.8 determines that a notice must be placed at the perimeter of the critical infrastructure to warn people that this is in fact critical infrastructure and to make sure.
Let's go back now to Middelburg and Mpumalanga to take a listen into those hearings on Section 25 and the expropriation of land without compensation.
Sizibotshwa kungako namhlanje singenalutho ngoba saphukwa ukusebenza kwethu amaplastiki sizuzeni namhlanje laba abantu bafuna ukuqephezela thina waye singazange siqephezelise namhlanje ngiyabonga.
1977, a fine not exceeding 10 million. And this clause, of course, is applicable to the persons in control of infrastructure and not to the general public. 6. Whenever a court convicts any person of an offence in terms of this act where damage to or loss of property related to the critical infrastructure was caused, the prosecutor must direct the attention of the person in control of that critical infrastructure to the provisions of Section 300 of the Criminal Procedure Act and inform the court accordingly. Chair, I may just direct the attention of the honourable members to the fact that subclauses 3 to 6 are exactly as they were voted upon, not voted upon, but deliberated upon earlier, and the one subclause that provided for mitigating circumstances when the security measures was in the public view and public domain is also now removed as a result of the narrowing of the definition of security measures. Yeah, I suppose there will be questions on this.
Thank you very much, Brigadier. That's chapter 5. Members, questions, input? Right, thank you. Members, if there's nothing specific, Brigadier, you want anything else to add?
Chairperson, except for repeating what was said yesterday, that in terms of the public interest defence, that we agree with Advocate Trengove that the very narrow definition of the security measures now sort of makes the public interest defence unnecessary, if that is also read with the word unlawfully, which means without justification. The further remark yesterday was that legislation do not normally contain all the defences as such, because that is something that a court will look at the literal interpretation of the section, of course, at the words that are there, but also at the factors outside those words, such as justification and grounds thereof. Then chapter 6, clause 27, the regulations. There are just a few consequential changes that are highlighted in red there. Clause 27(1)(e), Roman 3. The correct references were inserted there. Also Roman 4. Also Roman 5, and also Roman 6. Then H, paragraph H of subclause 1, the correct references were amended there, as well as I, as well as J. And then, as it relates to a question that was asked earlier by the Honourable Kola Barnard, subclause 5, the Minister must table any proposed regulations in Parliament for scrutiny before promulgation, as was deliberated on earlier. Subclause 6, there is a changing of the word "the" into "this", so that it reads, any regulation necessary for the immediate implementation of the Act must be promulgated to coincide with the coming into operation of this Act. And then when we get to the transitional arrangements in clause 30, there is a reference in clause 30, subclause 1, the last line, and then also subclause 2, where the period was amended from 16 months to 48 months, but that was already voted upon, or voted on rather. Still in subclause 2, the last line, once again the correct reference was inserted there. And then subclause 9, near the middle of the subclause, the correct reference was also inserted there. And so that concludes the amendments and the proposed amendments.
Thank you, Brigadier. Honourable Kola Barnard.
If you could define scrutiny for me in your legalese. To me it means I can read them really with great intent. It doesn't necessarily mean I can say this regulation's outrageous, take it out.
Right, we already discussed that, but I will give you a... Yeah, okay, right. Honourable Kola Barnard, thank you. Brigadier.
Yeah, Chair, I think the word scrutiny there denotes that the committee is not a mere rubber stamp for that, because if it's tabled for information in the committee, I think then obviously the committee will take note of it, but scrutiny denotes that the committee will be in a position to say, look, this regulation or that regulation should be changed to A, B and C. And it also, of course, in my view, gives the opportunity to the committee to make inputs into that, similar to the inputs that are provided for in clause 7, where written comments are invited. But I think the word scrutiny means more than just reading through. It definitely denotes that the committee has the power to look at them and propose changes.
Honourable Kalabana, with the definition. Right, any other members? Right, thank you, Brigadier. Yeah, maybe just in terms of process, Senior Legal Advisor Parliament, this is actually then the report that the committee must adopt before inclusion in the main bill. So we will depend on a quorum, and of course the Chief Whip of the majority party will attend to that in due course. Yeah, so that is the unless there's anything else members want to comment, that we can then adopt that report specifically. Right, nothing else. Chief Whip, Honourable, do you got any indication? Should we maybe take a short recess, 15 minutes? What is your take? We need to put the report as presented by the Brigadier and the drafting team.
Is it possible to continue with the iPad, or it only needs?
We also need a quorum for that.
Okay.
So I think members, let's take a 15-minute break, then we will reconvene then 1:45. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brigadier. Thank you to the drafting team.